At my brother's promotion party, my dad said into the mic, "One of my sons actually made it." My mom added, "At least he didn't waste his life on others." Guests laughed. I took the mic and said, "You're right, so I'm done paying for yours." I walked away as the manager stepped forward, holding their unpaid bill, and that was just the beginning. My name is Timothy Martinez. I am 32 years old. For most of my adult life, I have been the dependable son, the one they called when rent came up short, the one who answered at 2 in the morning when the car broke down, the one who never said no. My brother Nathan is 3 years younger. He works in marketing for a tech startup downtown. Our parents talk about him like he hung the moon. Every dinner conversation circles back to his accomplishments, his promotions, his networking events. When Nathan bought his first car, Dad threw a barbecue. When I bought mine, no one remembered to call. I work as a civil engineer for the county. Stable job, good benefits, reliable income. The kind of work that keeps cities running but never makes headlines. My parents introduced me to people as their older son, the responsible one, always with a tone that made responsibility sound like a participation trophy. Growing up, I learned early that love in our house came with conditions. Nathan was the golden child from the moment he could walk. Charismatic, charming, always knowing the right thing to say. I was quieter. I preferred books to parties, structure to chaos. That made me forgettable. When I was 16, I saved for months to buy a laptop for school. I kept the money in an envelope under my mattress. One morning, it was gone. I found out later that Dad had taken it to cover Nathan's spring break trip. No one asked me. No one apologized. When I brought it up, Mom said I should be happy to help my brother make memories. That was the first time I understood my role. I was not the son they celebrated, and I was the safety net they took for granted. By the time I graduated college, I was already paying half the mortgage. Dad had invested poorly in a business venture that collapsed. The bank threatened foreclosure. I stepped in. I always stepped in. The expectation was never spoken aloud, but it was absolute. Family takes care of family, and in our family, that meant I took care of everyone else. Nathan never contributed. He moved into a trendy loft downtown after college. Expensive furniture, bottle service on weekends. Meanwhile, I stayed in a modest apartment near work, funneling 70% of my paycheck into their accounts. Car payments, credit card bills, property taxes, utilities. I covered it all. They never thanked me. Gratitude was not part of the equation. Instead, I got reminders of how much easier my life was compared to theirs. How I did not have a wife or kids to worry about. How I should be grateful they raised me with strong values. Mom called every few weeks with a new emergency. The furnace needed replacing. The roof was leaking. Nathan needed help with his student loans, even though he earned more than me. Every request came with the unspoken threat that refusal meant I was selfish. So I never refused. I told myself it was temporary, that once they got back on their feet, things would balance out, that eventually they would see me as more than a checkbook. But the calls kept coming, and I kept paying. 3 months ago, Nathan got promoted to senior account manager. It was a big deal, the kind of promotion that came with a raise, a corner office, and a company car. Dad insisted on throwing a party to celebrate, not a small gathering, a full event at Romano's, the upscale Italian place downtown, with the exposed brick and the $50 steaks. Dad texted me 2 weeks before the party. He said he wanted it to be special, something Nathan would remember. He asked if I could help with costs. I wired $3,000 the next day. I assumed I was splitting expenses with them. I assumed wrong. The invitations went out. 75 guests, open bar, 4-course meal, a custom cake shaped like a briefcase. I got my invitation in the mail like everyone else. No mention of my contribution, no seat at the planning table. I was just another guest. I thought that was fine. I thought maybe this once I could just show up and be proud of my brother without carrying the weight of everything else. I should have known better. In our family, I was never just a guest. I was always the foundation no one bothered to thank. The party was on a Saturday night in early September. I wore my best suit, the charcoal one I saved for weddings and funerals. I arrived early and found a spot near the back. The restaurant had reserved their entire private dining room. String lights hung from the ceiling. Tables were draped in cream linen. Everything looked expensive. Mom and Dad stood near the entrance, greeting people like celebrities. Nathan held court at the center table, laughing with his co-workers. I watched from the edge, nursing a glass of water, waiting for the night to end. The speeches started after the appetizers. Dad stood first, grabbing the microphone from the DJ booth with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. He tapped it twice. The room quieted. He cleared his throat and smiled wide. The kind of smile politicians use before making promises they will not keep. He began talking about fatherhood, about watching his sons grow, about the pride of seeing them become men. I felt something tighten in my chest, a familiar knot, the one that formed every time I knew I was about to be erased. Dad gestured toward Nathan, who stood and waved like he was accepting an award. The crowd applauded. Dad continued, his voice rising with performative emotion. Then he said it. One of my sons actually made it. The words hung in the air like smoke. People glanced around, some nodding, some laughing politely. I felt my face go numb. My hands clenched the edge of the table. Mom stood next. She took the microphone from Dad, her expression warm but calculated. She had perfected the art of backhanded compliments. She looked out at the room and let the pause stretch just long enough to ensure everyone was listening. At least he didn't waste his life on others, she added, her tone light, like she was sharing an inside joke. The room erupted into laughter. Not cruel laughter, not mean, just the comfortable kind of laughter people offer when they think they are supposed to. But it hit me like a fist. I sat frozen. My throat felt tight, my vision blurred at the edges. Around me, people clinked glasses. Someone shouted congratulations. Nathan raised his drink and grinned. No one looked at me. No one thought to. I was invisible. Again. I wanted to leave. I wanted to walk out and never come back. But my legs would not move. My hands stayed locked on the table. I felt like I was drowning in the middle of a party where everyone else was breathing just fine. Then something inside me cracked. It was not anger. Not yet. It was clarity. The kind that comes when you realize you have been living a lie. That the people you have sacrificed everything for see you as nothing more than a utility, a tool they only notice when it stops working. I stood. My chair scraped against the floor. A few heads turned. I walked toward the front of the room. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, but my steps were steady. Dad was still holding the microphone, laughing with someone at the next table. I reached out and took it from his hand. He looked surprised but said nothing. The room quieted again, slower this time, confused. I did not plan what I was going to say. I did not rehearse. I just spoke. "You're right," I said, my voice calm, measured. "So I'm done paying for yours." The silence that followed was absolute. No clinking glasses, no laughter, just stunned, suffocating quiet. I handed the microphone back to the DJ and turned toward the exit. My legs felt steadier now, my chest lighter. Behind me, I heard someone whisper my name. I did not turn around. I pushed through the double doors and stepped into the hallway. The air was cooler here. I could breathe again. That was when I heard the second voice. The restaurant manager, a middle-aged man in a pressed vest, approached my parents with a leather folder in his hands. "Excuse me," he said, his tone professional but firm. "There seems to be an issue with the payment." I did not stay to watch. I did not need to. I already knew what was about to happen. The credit card Dad gave them was mine, and that morning I had canceled it. I walked out into the September night, the sound of confused voices fading behind me. I got into my car and sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. For the first time in my life, I felt free and terrified, because I knew this was only the beginning. I did not go home right away. I drove aimlessly through the city, windows down, radio off. The streets were busy with Saturday night crowds, people laughing outside bars, couples holding hands on corners, life moving forward while mine felt suspended. I replayed the moment over and over. Dad's face when I took the microphone. The laughter that had come so easily at my expense. Mom's expression frozen somewhere between confusion and indignation. Nathan still grinning, oblivious to the fact that his celebration had just collapsed. My phone started buzzing around 11. I glanced at the screen. Dad, Mom, Nathan, Dad again. I turned the phone face down on the passenger seat and kept driving. Part of me expected to feel regret, shame, the instinct to apologize and fix what I had broken. But those feelings never came. Instead, I felt hollow, like I had been carrying a weight for so long that removing it left me unsteady. I ended up at a 24-hour diner near the highway, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. I ordered eggs I did not eat and sat by the window, watching headlights blur past. A waitress refilled my cup without asking. She did not try to make conversation. I was grateful for that. The truth was, I had known for years that I meant nothing to them. I had felt it every time they called asking for money, but never asking how I was. Every time Nathan got praised for things I had already done. Every time I showed up and was treated like furniture. But knowing something and admitting it are different. Tonight I had admitted it, out loud, in front of 75 people. I had stopped pretending. I thought about my childhood, the laptop they stole, the birthday they forgot because it fell the same week as Nathan's graduation, the time I got accepted into a summer engineering program and Dad said it was nice but did not compare to Nathan making varsity soccer. I thought about the countless times I had swallowed my anger and told myself it was just how families worked. That love was complicated, that I was being too sensitive. But love is not supposed to feel like suffocation. It is not supposed to cost everything and give nothing back. I stayed at the diner until 2 in the morning. My phone had stopped buzzing. 17 missed calls, 12 texts. I did not read them. I knew what they would say. Guilt trips, accusations, demands for explanations I did not owe. When I finally drove home, the apartment felt different, quieter, emptier, but not in a bad way. It felt like mine. I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my suit, and opened my laptop. I pulled up my banking app, joint accounts, auto transfers, standing payments, all of it linked to their names, their emergencies, their expectations. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I started clicking. I was 12 the first time I realized I was not the son they wanted. It was the week before Christmas. Nathan and I had both written lists for Santa, even though I was starting to suspect Santa was just Dad with a fake beard. My list was short, a telescope. I had been obsessed with astronomy that year. I had checked out every book the school library had on constellations. Nathan's list was 3 pages long. Video games, a new bike, a leather jacket he had seen at the mall. Things that cost more than our monthly grocery bill. Christmas morning came. The tree was surrounded by boxes. Nathan tore through his presents like a tornado. Every item from his list was there. The bike had a red bow. The jacket fit perfectly. I opened my gifts slowly. Socks, a sweater that was 2 sizes too big, a generic science kit from the drugstore. No telescope. Mom saw my face and smiled. "You're older," she said. "You understand that Christmas isn't about things." But it was not about understanding. It was about being seen. And I was not. That pattern repeated for years. Nathan got the new laptop for school. I got told to share the family desktop. Nathan got the car when he turned 16. I got told I could borrow it if I paid for gas. Nathan's college tuition was covered without question. Mine came with lectures about responsibility and loans I would spend a decade repaying. I was 24 when I paid off my student loans. I did not tell anyone. There was no one to tell who would care. By then, I was already covering their mortgage. Dad had quit his job to start a consulting business that never took off. Mom worked part-time at a boutique, but spent more than she earned. The bank sent foreclosure notices. I stepped in because that was what I did. Nathan was in his first year at his marketing job. He made decent money but spent it faster. Bottle service, designer clothes, weekend trips to Vegas. When his credit cards maxed out, he called Mom. Mom called me. I paid them off. Twice. No one said thank you. No one acknowledged it. When I brought it up once, Dad said I should be proud to help my brother get started in life. That family supports family, but support only flowed one direction. I remembered my 30th birthday. I had mentioned it a week earlier during a Sunday dinner. Mom nodded. Dad said they would take me out. I waited for a call that never came. That night, I sat alone in my apartment with takeout and a movie I had already seen. 3 days later, I saw photos on Facebook. They had taken Nathan to a steakhouse to celebrate closing his first big client deal, the same restaurant they had promised to take me to. I did not say anything. I never did. I had learned that silence was easier than confrontation, that asking for recognition only made me seem needy, that the role I played was dependable, invisible Timothy, the one who asked for nothing because he knew he would get nothing. But tonight, sitting on my bed, staring at the rows of automatic payments on my screen, I realized something. I had built their lives with my silence. I had enabled their cruelty by never pushing back. I had let them erase me because I was too afraid to be seen as selfish. That ended now. Sunday morning came with 32 missed calls. I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating against the nightstand. I picked it up and saw the notification count. Messages, voicemails, emails, all from them. I set the phone down and made coffee. The first text I read was from Nathan. "What the hell, Timothy? You embarrassed us." The second was from Mom. "You owe us an explanation. Call me now." The third was from Dad. "We need to talk about your behavior last night." My behavior, not theirs. Not the years of dismissal, not the public humiliation. Mine. I deleted the messages without responding. I spent the morning going through my finances with the kind of focus I usually reserve for work projects. Spreadsheets, bank statements, payment histories, everything I had quietly funded for the past decade. The mortgage, $1,200 a month for 6 years, $72,000. The car payments, 2 vehicles, one for Dad, one for Mom, 18,000 combined. Credit cards paid off 4 times, roughly 35,000. Utilities, internet, phone plans, streaming services, another 10,000 over the years. Nathan's student loans, the ones he defaulted on, 22,000. Medical bills, emergency vet visits for their dog, home repairs, Christmas gifts they bought on my card and never reimbursed. The total was staggering, over $160,000. More than a decade of my life poured into people who could not be bothered to thank me. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. Then I started making changes. First, I canceled the automatic mortgage payment. It was scheduled to process on the 15th. That gave them 2 weeks. Next, I removed myself from their auto insurance policy. I had been listed as the primary because my credit score lowered their rates. Without me, their premiums would double. I canceled the credit cards I had opened in my name for their use, the ones they maxed out every month on dinners and shopping trips. I logged into the utility accounts, electric, water, internet, all in my name because their credit would not qualify. I transferred the accounts back to them. If they wanted to keep the lights on, they would have to apply themselves. I closed the joint bank account we shared, the one they had convinced me to open years ago for emergencies. The balance was $14. I withdrew it and closed the account entirely. Each click felt like removing a chain. By noon, I had dismantled the entire structure I had built for them. The safety net was gone. They were on their own. My phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. On the 4th call, I answered. "Timothy, what the hell is going on?" His voice was sharp, angry. I kept my tone even. "I meant what I said last night. You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted, and I did. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, trying to recalibrate. "Your mother is devastated," he said, switching tactics. "You humiliated us in front of everyone." "You humiliated me first," I replied. "For years, I just stopped letting it happen." "You're being selfish," he snapped. I almost laughed. Selfish. The word they used every time I considered my own needs. The word that had kept me compliant for so long. "Then I guess I'm selfish," I said. "Don't call me again unless you're ready to apologize." I hung up. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight. But I did not call back. I did not apologize. I sat in my apartment and let the silence settle around me like a new skin. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself, and it felt like freedom. The calls did not stop. They came in waves, morning, afternoon, late at night. I stopped answering. I let them pile up like evidence. By Tuesday, the voicemails shifted in tone. Anger turned to confusion. Confusion turned to panic. "Mom left a message at 7 in the morning. Her voice was tight, strained. Timothy, the mortgage payment didn't go through. There must be a mistake. Call the bank. There was no mistake. Dad called an hour later. The insurance company says our policy lapsed. Fix this. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the rest. Nathan texted mid-morning. Dude, what's your problem? Mom's freaking out. I did not respond. I spent the week organizing. I was an engineer. I knew how to build systems. I also knew how to dismantle them. I pulled every receipt, every bank statement, every email confirmation. I created a folder on my desktop labeled Family Expenses. Inside, I built subfolders, mortgage, cars, credit cards, utilities, medical, loans, gifts, each folder filled with documentation. Screenshots of payment confirmations, scanned checks, bank transfers with dates and amounts. I highlighted patterns, monthly payments that never varied, emergency transfers that became routine, promises to pay me back that were never kept. I created a timeline, a visual representation of a decade spent funding their lives while mine stayed small and modest. I did not do this out of spite. I did it for clarity, because I knew what was coming. I knew they would deny, gaslight, rewrite history to make me the villain. I needed proof. On Wednesday, I received an email from the mortgage company, a notice of non-payment. They had tried to process the automatic withdrawal, and it had failed. If payment was not received within 10 days, late fees would apply. If it went beyond 30 days, they would begin foreclosure proceedings. I saved the email. Thursday brought another notice. The electric company. Service would be disconnected in 14 days without payment. I saved that one too. Friday afternoon, Mom called from a number I did not recognize. I answered without thinking. Timothy. Her voice was strained, desperate. Why are you doing this? I'm not doing anything, I said calmly. I'm just not doing everything anymore. You're punishing us, she said, her tone shifting to accusation. Over one comment at a party. You're being childish. One comment, as if it was not a culmination of 32 years of being treated as less than. As if it was not a lifetime of being invisible unless they needed something. If you see it that way, that's your choice, I replied. But I'm done funding your life while you mock mine. She was quiet for a moment. Then her voice turned cold. You're going to regret this. Maybe, I said, but I doubt it. I hung up. That evening, I received a text from Nathan. It was a screenshot, a group chat with family friends. Someone had asked what happened at the party. Mom had responded. Timothy had some kind of breakdown. We're trying to get him help. I stared at the message. A breakdown. That was the narrative they were building. Not that they had humiliated me, not that they had taken me for granted. I was unstable. I needed help. It was textbook. Reframe the victim as the problem. Make the person who sets boundaries look unreasonable. I took a screenshot of the group chat. I added it to my folder. By the end of the week, I had a complete picture, not just of the money, but of the manipulation, the pattern of dismissal and control. The way they framed me as difficult whenever I asked for anything, and dependable whenever they needed something. I also had a plan. Saturday morning, I called a lawyer. Not for a lawsuit. I did not want their money back. I wanted something more important. I wanted documentation. I wanted a legal record of what I had contributed and what I was owed, not in dollars, but in acknowledgement. The lawyer listened to my story. She took notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. You have a strong case if you wanted to pursue repayment, she said. I don't want repayment, I replied. I want protection. I want a paper trail in case they try to claim I abandoned them or owe them something. She nodded. I can draft a statement, a legal notice that you are withdrawing financial support and severing any joint obligations. It protects you if they try to claim dependency or financial responsibility later. Do it, I said. She drafted the letter that afternoon. It was formal, clinical. It outlined every account I had closed, every payment I had stopped, every joint obligation I had dissolved. It stated clearly that I was no longer financially responsible for them. It was sent via certified mail. They would receive it Monday. I left the lawyer's office and drove to the park near my apartment. I sat on a bench and watched the sunset. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Monday came with silence. No calls, no texts. I assumed they were regrouping, planning their next move. I was wrong. They showed up at my apartment. I was making dinner when I heard the knock. 3 sharp raps. Insistent. I looked through the peephole. Dad stood in the hallway, arms crossed. Mom was beside him, her face tight with anger. Nathan lingered behind them, hands in his pockets. I thought about not answering, about letting them stand there until they gave up, but I knew they would not leave, so I opened the door. "We need to talk," Dad said, pushing past me without waiting for an invitation. Mom followed. Nathan hesitated, then stepped inside. I closed the door and stood near it, arms folded. "You can't do this," Dad started, his voice loud, commanding. "You can't just cut us off." "I already did," I said. "The mortgage payment bounced," Mom said, her tone sharp. "The bank is threatening foreclosure. Do you understand what that means?" "Yes," I said. "It means you need to make a payment." "We don't have that kind of money right now," she snapped. "You know that." "Then you should have thought about that before you humiliated me in front of 75 people," I replied, my voice calm, steady. Nathan stepped forward. "Come on, man, you're really going to destroy the family over a joke?" I looked at him, my younger brother, the golden child who had never been asked to sacrifice anything, who had spent his life being celebrated while I was erased. "It wasn't a joke," I said, "and I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not holding it together anymore." "You're being selfish," Mom said, her voice rising. That word again. "You're right," I said. "I am. For the first time in my life. I'm putting myself first, and you can't stand it." Dad's face turned red. "We raised you better than this." I laughed. It was bitter, sharp. "You didn't raise me at all. You used me." "That's not fair," Mom said, her voice cracking. "We've always been there for you." "Name one time," I CDSenged. "One time you were there for me. One birthday you remembered without me reminding you. One accomplishment you celebrated. One time you asked how I was doing without needing something." The room went silent. "You can't," I said, "because it never happened. I was never your son. I was your safety net." Nathan shifted uncomfortably. "Timothy, this is crazy. Just pay the mortgage. We'll figure the rest out." "No," I said. "You'll figure it out. I'm done." Dad stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. "If you don't fix this, you'll regret it." I met his gaze. "Is that a threat?" He said nothing. "Get out," I said. "Timothy," Mom started. "Get out of my apartment," I repeated, louder this time. They stood there for a moment, frozen. Then Dad turned and walked toward the door. Mom followed, her expression a mixture of shock and fury. Nathan lingered. "You're really doing this?" he asked quietly. "I really am," I said. He shook his head and left. I closed the door behind them and locked it. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight. But I did not cry. I did not collapse. I walked to the kitchen and sat down. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. The lawyer had sent a follow-up. The certified letter had been delivered. They had signed for it that morning. There was no going back now. Wednesday afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Mr. Martinez," a woman's voice said. "This is Heather Diaz from First National Bank. I'm calling regarding the property at 428 Maple Street, my parents' house." "I'm no longer associated with that property," I said carefully. "I understand," she replied, "but you were listed as a co-signer on the original mortgage. We've been trying to reach the primary account holders, but they haven't responded. The account is now 45 days past due. I've sent legal documentation removing myself from any financial responsibility," I said. "You should have received it." There was a pause. "We did. I'm calling to confirm. You're aware this may result in foreclosure proceedings?" "I am," I said. "Understood. Thank you for your time." She hung up. I sat in my car, parked outside a coffee shop, staring at the phone. Foreclosure. The word felt heavy, final. But I did not feel guilty. I felt relief. That evening, Nathan called. I almost did not answer, but curiosity won. "They're losing the house," he said, his voice strained. "I know," I replied. "You have to help them." "No," I said, "I don't." "Timothy, this is insane. They're our parents." "They're your parents," I corrected. "They stopped being mine a long time ago." He was silent for a moment. Then quietly, I can't cover this on my own. And there it was, the real reason for the call. Not concern for them, fear for himself, because without me, the weight would fall on him. Then I guess you'll figure it out, I said, like I had to. I hung up. 3 months passed. I heard through a mutual friend that my parents sold the house, not to avoid foreclosure, but because they could not afford the payments even after Nathan tried to help. They moved into a small rental across town, the kind of place I had lived in for years while funding their mortgage. Nathan's promotion celebration became a story people whispered about at family gatherings. The night Timothy snapped. The night everything fell apart. But it did not fall apart. It just stopped being held together by me. I changed my phone number. I blocked them on social media. I kept the legal documentation in a folder, just in case. But they never reached out. Not to apologize, not to explain. They simply moved on, rebuilding their lives without me. And I rebuilt mine. I started saying yes to things I had always said no to. Weekend trips, dinners with friends, a painting class I had always wanted to try. I bought a new car. Not because I needed one, but because I wanted one. I saved money for the first time in years. Real money. The kind that sits in an account and grows instead of vanishing into someone else's emergency. I went to therapy, not because I felt broken, but because I wanted to understand why I had let it go on for so long. Why I had believed that love required self-erasure. My therapist told me something I will never forget. She said that boundaries are not punishments. They are promises you make to yourself. I had finally kept that promise. One evening in December, I was walking through the city when I saw them. Mom and Dad standing outside a pharmacy. They looked older, tired. Mom was carrying a single grocery bag. Dad was scrolling through his phone. They did not see me. I could have walked over, could have said something, but I did not. I kept walking. There was no anger left, no bitterness, just a quiet acceptance that some relationships are not meant to survive honesty. I thought about the party, the microphone, the laughter, the moment I finally said no. People ask me if I regret it, if I wish I had handled it differently. The answer is no. Because that night I stopped being invisible. I stopped being the reliable son who asked for nothing. I became the man who knew his worth, and that was worth everything. I found a new apartment closer to work, bigger windows, better light. I hung photos on the walls, not of family, of places I wanted to go, things I wanted to do. I started running in the mornings. I joined a book club. I went on a date with someone who made me laugh. Life became mine. Sometimes late at night, I think about what it would take for them to reach out. A real apology, acknowledgement of what they took. But I do not wait for it. I do not need it anymore. I learned that you cannot make people see you if they are determined to look away. And you cannot pour from an empty cup. So I filled my own cup, and I stopped apologizing for it. The last time I heard from them was a text from Nathan. It came on Christmas Eve. "Hope you're doing okay." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed a response. I am. And I was. I spent Christmas morning alone, drinking coffee and watching the snow fall. It was quiet, peaceful, mine. For the first time in 32 years, I was not carrying anyone else's weight. I was not fixing anyone else's problems. I was not invisible. I was free, and that was the greatest gift I had ever given myself.
Did you enjoy my story? What a journey it has been. I truly wonder, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have chosen silence to keep the peace, or would you have done what I did to reclaim your dignity? Let's meet in the comments below. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I'm reading every single one. Which city are you listening from tonight? If my story resonated with you, you can support me and help me bring more stories like this to the world by sending a super thanks. Your sweet support means the world to me and allows me to continue this journey with all of you. On the screen now, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend you watch next. There are so many more on my channel, each with its own lessons and triumphs. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Thank you for being here with me. Until the next story, with love and respect.